The day I was fired was the day I inherited everything. Not just the shares, the power, the proof, the legacy. Martin thought he'd erased me. What he didn't know, I owned the damn company, and I was coming for him. That morning, I'd been halfway through reviewing the quarterly sales data for Zenith Robotics, our best quarter in 3 years, with a 17% revenue spike from our new autonomous drone line. My office was quiet, the hum of the factory floor a faint pulse through the walls. I was scribbling notes on a production tweak, faster battery swaps for disaster relief missions, when the door slammed open. No knock, no courtesy, just the loud, deliberate entrance of a man who believed disruption was dominance. Typical Martin. Madison, he barked, tossing a thick manila folder onto my desk like it was yesterday's trash. We need to talk.
Now.
I glanced at the folder, then up at the man I'd worked under for 4 years. Martin Rhee. Wharton MBA, fast talker, all swagger, no soul. The kind of guy who called female employees sweetheart when he forgot their names, which was often, and only remembered you when he needed a coffee run or a color-coded spreadsheet. He didn't respect competence. He respected control. And more than that, he loved reminding people he had it. Still, I stayed calm. I always did. Of course, I said, motioning to the chair across from me. He didn't sit. Naturally. He wanted the power of height, the shadow looming over my desk like a threat. The board's decided to restructure the leadership team, he said, his voice clipped and rehearsed, like he'd practiced it in the mirror. We're moving in a new direction, and frankly, we need people who can lead, not just crunch numbers and babysit drones. I blinked.
Once.
Stunned, but only for a heartbeat. You're firing me? I asked, my tone flat. His smirk spread like rot. He thought he was clever. That this was a game. That he just pulled off some corporate checkmate. Let's not be dramatic, he said, dripping condescension. We're releasing you from your position, effective immediately. No warning. No performance review. No thank you for leading a department that had just delivered record-breaking numbers. Numbers I had fought for, staying late to tweak production schedules while Martin golfed with board members. Just done. I see, I said, my voice low. Controlled. Martin's eyes narrowed.
He didn't like that.
He expected shock, maybe tears, maybe begging. What he got was silence and restraint, and it rattled him more than any outburst could have. You'll need to return your badge and company laptop by end of day, he added, rushing the words like he was late for a tea time. HR will terminate your access by 5 p.m. They've got your severance details. I stood slowly and extended my hand. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate the clarity. He hesitated, just for a beat, but shook it. His palm was clammy. Then he turned and walked out like he'd won something. I didn't move. I sat back down. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't break. Because what Martin didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that firing me wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And he had just made the biggest mistake of his career. The office felt hollow after Martin left. Not peaceful, empty. Like the air had been sucked out, leaving only the echo of his arrogance behind. I stared at the folder he'd thrown on my desk. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. It was bullshit anyway. Fake metrics. Rehearsed HR lines. Manufactured reasons to justify kicking me out. Martin thought he'd ended my career with that smug little smirk. But he didn't realize he'd just lit the fuse. I reached for the photo on my desk, my father and me, standing in front of Zenith's first regional office in Raleigh, North Carolina. His hand rested on my shoulder, his eyes bright with pride. It had been his dream once, a company that built cutting-edge robotics to solve real problems, like disaster relief drones that could deliver supplies to flood zones, not just pad executive bonuses. When he stepped down as CEO 10 years ago, that dream became mine. I traced the frame with my thumb, hearing his voice from the last time we stood in this building together. Don't fight for your place, Madison. Build it. Then own it. But wait. Wait until the moment matters.
That moment was now.
2 weeks earlier, on the morning of my 30th birthday, I'd sat in our family lawyer's office, staring at a heavy cream envelope.
Sealed.
No markings except one sentence in my father's familiar handwriting. Open this when the world tries to forget who you are. I'd laughed then. A small, confused laugh. It sounded like something from a cheesy movie. I wasn't laughing now. Inside was a letter. And a legal document. A trust agreement, notarized, sealed with embossed gold. I could still hear Mr. Harrington's voice. Calm, certain. The same tone he'd used at Dad's funeral 3 years ago. Your father retained 90% of Zenith Robotics' private shares when he stepped down. They've been held in trust under your name. Fully transferable. Full voting rights. Activated the day you turned 30.
90%.
Not a stake. Control. I'd read it 3 times. Then once more just to be sure. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't hoping. I own the company.
Silently.
Legally.
Completely. And Martin?
Martin had no idea. My hands trembled that day. Not from fear, but from something else.
Power.
Quiet. Sharp. Real. I'd sat there, staring at the letter, my coffee going cold, feeling the weight of what Dad had done. He hadn't just given me shares. He'd given me a weapon, one I hadn't known I'd need until now. Now, sitting in my office, staring at that photo one last time, I exhaled slowly. 15 years of being overlooked, sidelined in meetings where I pitched drone upgrades only for Martin to claim the credit, interrupted while he rambled about big-picture thinking, dismissed as too detail-oriented when I pushed for efficiency over flash. 2 years ago, in front of the entire exec team, he'd smirked and said, "You're not CO material, Madison. You're the calculator, not the compass." The room had laughed, awkwardly, nervously, and I'd gone home that night believing him, staring at my reflection, wondering if he was right. Today, I didn't just hold the compass. I wrote the map. I packed my things slowly, deliberately. Just a chipped coffee mug from last Christmas, a few notebooks filled with drone designs Martin never bothered to read, and the one thing no one could take from me: leverage. Outside, the office buzzed with whispers. No one asked questions, but I saw it in their eyes.
Pity.
Confusion.
Judgment.
Let them wonder. Because in 5 business days, I wouldn't be walking into that boardroom as a disgraced department head. I'd be walking in as their majority shareholder. And Martin Rees' reign? It was already over. He just didn't know it yet. The world outside kept spinning like nothing had changed. But everything had. I walked through Zenith's glass doors for the last time as an employee, my box of belongings tucked under one arm, my phone buzzing with polite HR follow-ups I had no intention of answering. The Raleigh air was crisp, the sun bright, and beneath my steady steps burned a current of rising fire. Martin thought he'd won. He thought I'd go quietly. He thought wrong. As soon as I got home, I called Mr. Harrington. "It's time," I said, no preamble. Just the words that would light the fuse. A pause. Then his voice, steady as always. "Understood. The paperwork to initiate a shareholder meeting is ready. We can deliver notice by end of week. How soon can we schedule it?" "Legally, 5 business days. That puts the meeting on Tuesday." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "Make it official." That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. My mind was sharper than ever, every detail calculated, every contingency mapped out. I knew Martin's playbook: charm, noise, confidence. He bulldozed meetings with jargon, drowned opposition with stats he barely understood, kept the board placated with flattery and half-truths. But his strength had a fatal flaw. He never saw the quiet ones coming. Friday morning, notice of a special shareholder meeting hit the board's inboxes. One item on the agenda: review and restructuring of executive leadership. 10 words. A bullet. Martin would downplay it, call it routine. He'd assume the shareholders, distant, uninvolved suits in his mind, had some minor grievance. He wouldn't realize I was the shareholder. That I owned 90%. That I was coming for everything. Later that day, I met Caroline Winters, the trustee who'd managed the shares since Dad's passing. Her Raleigh office was quiet, her tone clipped, efficient. But her eyes burned with something fierce. I've watched that man dismantle your father's legacy brick by brick, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. You don't owe him politeness. Inside was my arsenal for Tuesday. Ownership certificates. Voting records. A breakdown of Martin's performance. It was damning. Turnover in leadership roles had doubled in 2 years. Good people like Kevin, a product lead I'd begged to stay, driven out by Martin's ego. Employee satisfaction had tanked 38%. Executive bonuses had ballooned while factory workers got pay freezes. And worst? Revenue had flattened, despite my drone line's success, because Martin funneled profits into pet projects like a flashy VR headset that never shipped. He's been coasting on your work, Caroline said. Smoke and mirrors. Another 2 years and Zenith's underwater. I nodded, the numbers fueling me. Let the boards see for themselves. But then she leaned forward, her voice dropping. There's something else. Something your father left in the trust, a contingency. It's not just shares. I frowned. What do you mean? She pulled a sealed envelope from her drawer, marked with Dad's initials. He called it his insurance policy. Said if the company ever fell into the wrong hands, this would be your ace in the hole. I didn't open it. Only you can. My pulse quickened. Another surprise? I took the envelope, my fingers brushing the wax seal. Thank you, Caroline. That night, alone in my apartment, I broke the seal. Inside was a single page, a handwritten note from Dad, dated 6 months before his death. Madison, if you're reading this, it means the company's lost its way. The shares give you power, but this gives you proof. Check the offshore account. Martin's been skimming for years. I caught him, but I couldn't act.
You can.
Use it wisely.
Love, Dad.
Below was an account number and a password. I sat back, heart pounding. Martin wasn't just incompetent. He was a thief. Dad had known. He'd been watching, even from the sidelines, and he'd armed me with the one thing Martin couldn't dodge: evidence. Sunday night, I logged into the account. There it was, $2.3 million siphoned over 4 years, funneled through a shell company tied to Martin's name. Deposits matched dates of executive retreats he'd bragged about, trips to the Bahamas he'd called team building. It was airtight. Martin thought I was gone. Forgotten.
Erased.
He had no idea what was coming. Tuesday morning. Raleigh buzzed like always, fast, loud, oblivious. But on the 21st floor of Zenith's polished steel HQ, everything was about to shift. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not late. Not rushed. I wasn't here to impress. I was here to reclaim. The receptionist, Elena, blinked when she saw me. Ms. Blake. Madison, please, I said with a smile. They're expecting me. Technically, they weren't, but they'd learn soon enough. Upstairs, I glimpsed movement through the boardroom's frosted glass. Voices. Papers rustling. Martin's familiar cadence. Confident. Just shy of smug. He was pitching his VR nonsense again. I could tell from the buzzwords drifting out. He had no idea. Mr. Harrington met me at the elevator, his face unreadable, but his eyes glinting. They're all inside, he said. Martin's already talking something about immersive innovation. Not for long, I replied and opened the door. The room stilled, like a theater when the curtain lifts. Martin froze mid-sentence, eyes narrowing as I walked in. Madison, he snapped. This meeting is for board members only. I smiled.
Calm. Precise.
Exactly. I walked to the head of the table, his seat, and placed 2 leather folders down with deliberate care. Martin straightened, voice rising. This is inappropriate. You no longer have a... I'm not here as an employee, I said, cutting through his bluster. I'm here as the majority shareholder. The words hit like a thunderclap. Chairs shifted. Brows raised. The CFO, Greg, flinched visibly. From the far end, Mr. Dalton, one of Dad's old allies, leaned forward and opened the first folder. Is this accurate? He asked, adjusting his glasses. It is, I said clearly. 90% of Zenith Robotics shares were transferred to me via a family trust on my 30th birthday. Effective immediately. All paperwork is filed, notarized, and per corporate bylaws. Martin's dry laugh cut through the silence. You can't be serious. Why would your father? Because he trusted me, I snapped, my voice sharp enough to slice. Because he knew what this company would become without oversight. And now, so does the board. Silence. I open the second folder. As majority shareholder, I've called this meeting to review the current executive leadership, specifically the CEO role. Martin stood, face red. This is a vendetta. You think you can just... I don't think, I said, stepping forward. I know. And I don't need a vote. I own 90%. The motion to remove you as CEO passes. Effective immediately. Murmurs erupted. Mr. Dalton glanced at the secretary. Per company policy, the vote stands. Transfer of leadership takes effect upon documentation. Martin stared at me, the man who'd called me kiddo in meetings, who'd rolled his eyes when I pitched drone upgrades, who'd told me I lacked vision. The man who'd once said, in front of everyone, that I'd never be more than a calculator. Now he had nothing. You can't do this, he hissed, almost pleading. There's more, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous calm. I slid the second folder forward. For 4 years, you've been skimming company funds, $2.3 million, funneled through a Cayman Islands account. My father caught you. He left me the proof. The board has copies, and the SEC will too, unless you walk away quietly. The room went dead silent. Martin's face drained of color. Greg dropped his pen. Even Mr. Dalton looked stunned. You're bluffing, Martin rasped, but his voice cracked. Am I? I held his gaze. Test me. He didn't. Security wasn't needed. Martin grabbed his jacket and stumbled out, shoulders hunched, face pale, defeated. The door clicked shut behind him. On the table, his polished brass nameplate, Martin Rhee, CEO, sat cold and irrelevant, a relic of his reign. I reached over, slid it aside with a faint scrape, and replaced it with mine. Madison Blake. A small sound, a seismic shift. The board watched in silence as the old order crumbled, not just in words, but in that simple, undeniable act. His era was over. I turned to them. This company deserves better, I said simply. So do the people who keep it running. Starting today, we build something worth believing in again. No one clapped. But they didn't need to. I didn't come for applause. I came for the truth. And now it was mine. I didn't move into the CEO's office right away. That wasn't the point. This wasn't about glass walls or corner views. Martin had chased symbols, stolen ones, at that. I wasn't here for symbols. I was here to restore the soul of a company my father built. So I started with the people. Monday, I called an all-hands meeting in Zenith's main conference hall, the same room where Martin used to wave charts like trophies, tossing praise to his cronies while the rest of us sat silent. Today was different. The front rows stayed empty at first. Employees trickled in, hesitant, murmuring. They didn't know what to expect from me, the woman who'd vanished 1 week and returned to unseat a CEO with a bombshell. Some looked hopeful, others scared. I stood alone. No slides, no slogans, just truth. Some of you know me, I began, but most of you only know what Martin told you, that I was a number cruncher, not a leader. A few heads lifted. I'm here to say this. I didn't come back to take power. I came back to give it back, to the people who earned it. Silence. Real listening. For years, Zenith ran on your backs. Your late nights fixing drone code, your ideas Martin ignored or stole, your commitment when he didn't care. Somewhere along the way, that got lost, replaced by fear, ego, theft. I paused, scanning the room. I saw Maya from customer service, who'd solved client crises Martin never noticed. Kevin's empty chair, he'd quit 6 months ago. The factory crew, who'd worked unpaid overtime to meet my deadlines. I was fired last week, I said, steady. Told I lacked vision. That I didn't lead. A few nervous laughs. I smiled. I didn't fight then because I knew something Martin didn't. Leadership isn't volume. It's vision, respect, lifting the people who make this place run. And it's accountability, something he'll face soon enough. The tension shifted. Eyes met mine. Starting today, everything changes. And I meant it. The next 2 weeks, I listened. I met every department head, every team lead, every intern with 5 minutes to spare. I walked the factory floor, watching drones hum to life. Drones now headed to disaster zones, not just showrooms, thanks to a pivot I'd pushed. I sat with the custodial staff during their break, coffee in hand. I asked 3 questions. What's broken? What do you need? Who's been doing the work and not getting credit? Then I acted. I promoted Maya to head of client experience. She'd been unofficially running the department for months, while her manager golfed with Martin. She cried when I told her, quietly in my office. I thought no one saw, she whispered. I hugged her. I did. I rehired Kevin as product lead. He'd quit after Martin rejected his AI prototype, now a competitor's bestseller. Over beers at a dive bar, I apologized. Zenith needs you, I said. He grinned. You're not Martin. I'm in. I dug through HR files, complaints buried for years. I fired 3 mid-level managers who'd built fiefdoms of fear, including Tom, who'd once screamed at an intern until she quit. The staff threw an impromptu party that Friday. Someone left a thank you note on my desk. The intern he'd berated, now back as a junior designer, brought cupcakes, her quiet thank you for a second chance. Then I launched People First, Dad's Dream Reborn, a program rewarding innovation, collaboration, equity. No more whisper networks. No more ceilings. Just good people doing great work and being seen. One night, I walked the halls after hours. Laughter echoed from the break room. Music drifted from engineering, someone testing a drone with a playlist blaring. People stayed late not from fear, but because they cared again. Near the factory wing, a whiteboard read in blue marker. She came back. Not she took over. Not she fired Martin. She came back. That mattered more than any title. Exactly 1 year later. 12 months since I'd walked out with a cardboard box and a polite smile, dismissed by a man who thought power was volume and vision was vanity, and who'd been stealing from us all along. Now, I stood before Zenith's glass doors again. Everything was different. I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to lead. The lobby hummed with energy. People smiled, nodded, greeted each other without fear. Elena stood when she saw me. Good morning, Ms. Blake. Madison, please, I said warmly. We're all on the same team. I rode the elevator to the top floor. Martin's old domain, now mine. I'd kept the walnut desk and windows, but the walls were new. No generic art or empty plaques. Instead, photos of our people, team retreats, drone launches, interns who'd become managers. Behind my desk hung Dad's portrait. Not a monument, a reminder. He believed in legacy, integrity, lifting others. Now, Zenith did too. I opened my laptop. Our strongest quarter in 5 years. Customer satisfaction up 23%, retention up 41%, revenue smashing records. All from People First and Kevin's relaunched AI line, now powering relief missions worldwide. But the numbers weren't the win. It was how we got there. No manipulation. No favoritism. Just clarity, collaboration, truth, and a company finally free of Martin's shadow. A knock. Maya poked her head in, eyes bright. Ready? They're waiting. I smoothed my blazer. Let's do it. The boardroom felt different. Half women, several under 40, all earned seats. Richard Tanaka, our new advisor, nodded as I entered. Madison has a few words, he said. I hadn't planned to speak, but as every eye turned, not in judgment, but respect, I knew this was Dad's moment too. Thank you, I said simply, for believing in change, for doing the hard thing when the easy thing was more comfortable. A year ago, I was told I lacked leadership. But leadership isn't power or posture. It's vision, accountability, courage to do what's right, even when it's inconvenient. My father built Zenith on those values. I'm proud to say, we're living up to them again. No grand applause. Just a quiet nod of approval, better than noise. Later, I walked the halls. The air felt lighter, alive. People looked up, smiled, stopped to chat. I paused near the break room, where a junior intern, Tom's old target, now thriving, split a cupcake with our head of engineering. They laughed over some shared joke, crumbs dusting the table. I didn't build an empire. I rebuilt a home. For the forgotten. The dismissed. The quiet warriors who'd kept this place alive despite Martin's reign. And as I watched them, I knew this wasn't just a company anymore. It was a place where people belonged. That was the real victory. This is Madison Blake. She didn't just survive a firing. She rewrote the rules. For more stories like this, where comeback queens reclaim their thrones, subscribe now. Share it. Stay fierce. Because power isn't always loud. Sometimes, it walks back in quietly and takes the head seat at the table.